You've taken off your passive income hat and you've put on your like, hey, I'm going to war hat. And that's welcome to Built to Sell, a podcast series designed for owners who are serious about running a more profitable business today that's worth more when they sell it. My guest today is Jason Lafferty, an RV park investor, developer, and operator based out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, who's become one of the most active voices in outdoor hospitality. Jason didn't come at this from a boardroom. He's a lifelong entrepreneur who once ran a transport company hauling campers and motorhomes, fell in love with the RV lifestyle himself, and got obsessed with the business after driving past a small, underused park and realizing what they could become. Today, he owns and operates multiple RV parks across Texas and Oklahoma, and he does something that most people in this space don't. He builds them from raw land. He founded Lafferty Construction, which grades sites, runs utilities, and constructs park ground up. He runs RV Park Pros, a for owners, by owners management and consulting company that turns underperforming parks into automated, cash flowing assets. He's a licensed broker who helps owners buy and sell. On top of that, he's the host of the RV Park Boss podcast and author of a book by the same name. Whether it's development, operations, or the exit, Jason has touched every part of the RV park lifecycle, and he's here to share what actually works. Welcome, Jason Lafferty.
My man, thank you very much. Happy to be here. Excited to talk shop.
You went from hauling repossessed campers to owning and building RV parks. What was the moment that you realized this was a business that you wanted to go all in on?
When I was in real estate in the COVID years, just kind of trying to find my path on the investment side. And I was just checking out parks, and I was, running some rough numbers and just kind of checking it out. Then I drove my camper back from the beach, and I was showing some houses and in Lake Whitney area, and there was just like a 10-site park on the side of the road. And I was like, well, maybe that could be my thesis. Just start with something small and flirt with it. And then that hobby just turned into an obsession. I think it was 2023. I got an SBA loan for just me and a 60-site development in Whitney. And then they just been going crazy ever since then. So it's like the little allure of attention, because I've always had, an enthusiast, grew up going to campgrounds, KOAs and stuff, tenting it up. I've always had a camper and stuff. And then, like I said, just started flirting, and then it just turned into an obsession. That's all I do. That's all I talk about. And that's it. Construction wise, I convinced my brothers to quit their jobs in construction. I said, hey, you're going to work for your little brother now. We're going to build parks, and it's going to be great. And it paired nicely because their backgrounds, 20 plus years in grading, paving, underground utilities. And I've always been the business guy, and I had the passion. So I was like, let's just keep going down this hole, putting these pieces together. And then from there, we jumped to a 60-site development, and then to a smaller acquisition, and then to another acquisition. And it's just a snowball effect, just kept going.
Yeah, the obsession piece, I think, is pretty critical, because there's a lot of bad information out there today. And there's a lot of people who are promoting this idea that this is like, whatever you want to call it, a get rich quick scheme, or it's a, it's buying something that's a lot closer to passive real estate. And the people who will refute that idea the most are the actual owners who have to answer those late night calls because a water line breaks, or who has to be on site with the sheriff to evict somebody, or not technically evict somebody, but get somebody off the property. All those things that when people say like, oh, passive investing, passive income, we just have to look at and laugh. You build parks from raw land and buy existing ones. How do you decide which game to play in a given market?
Again, I think it has to do a little bit with your strategy, but if you are analyzing a development deal, like the short math should be like, hey, acquisition, development, once this thing is fully stabilized, can I, 2.5, 3x what I'm trying to do here? Because if you like maybe get 1.5 or maybe 2, what if everything goes wrong? Then you just dollar in, dollar out. So I think having that initial target, so when you're analyzing the deal, that kind of helps out a lot.
So you mentioned a number there. You said you're looking for deals where you can get a 3x return. Walk me through that process on an acquisition. So is that a 3x on your equity investment? Is that a 3x on another metric? What are we talking about there?
Land, construction, so your full on cost. And then what's, as I don't like appraisals in RV parks because they're usually cute. But with, in your side of things, what you can actually sell that thing for is like, what's real deal it's worth. I just had a guy text me today, hey, we got a new appraisal in my park. You want to take another look at it? I'm like, what's an appraisal going to do? I mean, well, it's good for a bank, but it's not good for me. But so if I'm all in land, dirt, construction, $1 million, and I know and believe that I have this mid-sized park and I can make it worth $2.5 million, then that's very attractive, and I want to keep digging into that and iron out those processes, working those numbers. And really with parks is getting a judgment call feel, because it's a gut feeling. It's not like apartment complexes where you just go data, data, data. It's a feel that you believe that the occupancy and demand is there based off the local 20-mile radius.
Yeah, and when you're doing as much diligence as you are, which is actually going on site and staying at a park and partying with the people there, there's no better way to get a feel for the park, for the environment, for the demand, and that's either going to give you a good idea of what's there and what you might want to maintain as a new owner, or what you might want to course correct on, because it also shows the flaws when you're actually staying at the park. I think more people should do that. And two, on appraisals, I get such a kick out of seeing a CBRE or a JLL appraisal for an RV park, because I mean, those appraisals are like 70 pages long. They cost $2-3 grand, if not more, depending on the scope of the project. And I have never looked at one, as someone who's valued, hundreds of RV parks at this point. I've never looked at one and said, yeah, that's about right. Like, I tell people all the time, a professional appraisal for an RV park is literally not worth the paper that it's written on. So I get it. They serve a purpose. They check a box to the bank. But at the end of the day, if you're an owner and you have an appraisal for your park, whatever that number is, just assume that number is wrong, because that's not actually what someone's going to pay for it. That's what some, MBA behind a desk who's been doing appraisals for multifamily and land and everything else for the last however many years thinks that it's worth based on data that's in their system. But I've just seen so many of those appraisals miss the mark in such hilarious ways. Even as far as like, I'm not going to give you specifics, at least on air, but I've seen parks with appraisals valued at, and just one example, $14 million appraisal for a park that hadn't even been built yet in a tertiary market in Texas with 103 spaces. So they're valuing this tertiary market park at over $100K per pad, which is just like, I mean, you're laughing because you know how absurd that is. And then, in my mind, I think, okay, well, this is a CBRE appraisal. Like, there's some thought put behind this thing. So I actually go in and look at the numbers. And sure enough, when you take a deeper dive in the numbers, this tertiary nothing market town, very nice park, by the way, but tertiary nothing market was assuming that I think 40% of the revenue was going to come from monthly, another 30% was going to come from weekly, and then the rest was going to come from nightlies, which have your highest ADRs. But it also assumed that it was going to be like an 80%, running occupancy on what they were basically positioning as a transitory, recreational park in a market where nobody's visiting because they're traveling for that type of purpose. So it's hilarious just based on the facts, but it's also deeply concerning because that's where a lot of people are getting their information from. And that's how people are making, in this case, development decisions around. And I just would talk anybody out of putting any thought behind an appraisal beyond like getting a loan or getting a refinance. But that should be for you to check a box, not for you to make a decision.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
You've talked previously about real cost per site. What do most first-time developers get catastrophically wrong on that math?
It's just like almost any business, whatever you think is going to happen, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. That's the easy answer. But just in construction and development, you can have the best plan, but you could just have one engineer that kind of missed the mark, or you could have one contractor that just overlooks some things that cause some problems. Like I saw one park, it was kind of designed like a few years ago, like an old state park. So it was kind of like a round shaped park, and they had 3 different contractors, one doing the water, one doing sewer, one doing electrical. And so the last guy electrical, when he went to do his digging, it was just hitting everything. And it equated to an additional 6 or 8 months on like a 45 site park and extra time. So the owner is just sitting there, paying their debt service an extra 6 or 8 months. And then, then you look at other things like weather.
So in your experience, what amenities or design decisions have the best ROI for a new build, and which ones are maybe the nice to haves, but end up being a waste of money?
The automatic ice makers. Like a couple parks, there were smaller mid-sized parks, and it was doing 50 or 60 grand a year just because it was next to a busy road where there was a lot of traffic. So it was feeding off your RV park business a little bit, but all the traffic coming over there, just you added a $25,000 ice machine that you put bags in and water filters, and it just increased your gross income 50 grand a year. I mean, let's just keep doing that. But you gotta understand your park, because if you do that in a place where it doesn't make sense and you can't get enough eyeballs on it, then you're gonna spend that money and you're gonna be like, man, I wish I didn't spend that money.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about this all the time when it comes to things like ice machines. I love that conversation. Site covers down here in the South are critical in the summer months, and they can really move the needle on revenue. And if you do it right, you do it once, and it just makes marginally more money per site than a site that doesn't have it. We have investors in our network that a big pillar of their entire investment thesis is just walking in and putting as many site covers on day one and being the premium option for that little local market. And they've got the pockets to do it, because those things can cost, for a nice one, 10 to 15 grand pretty easily. And if you're in a market where you're competing against a mom and pop, if you've got 100 sites and 10 to 15 grand a pop and you want to cover all of them, you can do that math. The mom and pops can't really keep up with that. Certainly not with cash out of their pocket. They have to go get a loan, and many times they're just going to choose not to do that, which creates the margin for the next guy. But it's always interesting to have that conversation.
What I like about the covers is that you can phase them in. It's not like doing some hard amenities where you need to do it during your full-on construction. Is that you can just like, hey, let's start with 5 or 10 of them on this 100-site park. And if it's a home run, then we can just phase in, do another 5 or 10 or whatever the case may be. It's not something where you have to do all 50 at once. So that's what I like about those.
Love that. Another one that I heard about recently from a very, very large operator, super sophisticated group. We were doing an opinion of value on their park. They have this program that they run internally where if you want a storage, they'll get like a cuff shed storage from Home Depot. They'll bring it in, they'll set it up for you. And I think they were charging an additional $55 a month just to do that. Well, once they get their fixed costs out of the way, there's a payback period on that investment. And then that site just in perpetuity after that has an additional $55 a month charge. So they wouldn't put it on a site unless the actual occupant wanted to pay that premium. And if that person ever moved out, then that's just the going rate for that particular site. But they've done that phased in approach over a period of a couple of years. And I want to say, I'm guessing, but I'm pretty close, like over 60% of the park guests had subscribed to that and were paying that premium rate. And they were weighing the option of, should we just go ahead and put them all in there since people like them so much, and just let people either leave or stay there for an additional $55. And I don't know what they're going to end up doing.
Real quick, just to tie into that, is that's something to think about when you're on the design phase for a development or expansion too. Because even if it's an acquisition, you want to add 50 or 60 more sites, but you have that in your mind, how you design them to where each site layout and design would be great for those sheds or, whatever that actual piece is. So having that foresight can have a big impact. So I'm getting that.
Another area where that foresight matters, and we've seen this a lot recently, is with your utility capacity. Because Texas in certain areas is pretty deeply oversaturated with RV parks, and that's impacting everybody's occupancy, supply and demand math. And a lot of parks were designed for RVs, so 30 and 50 amp electricity coverage, and then whatever the TCEQ requirements are for water and wastewater, depending on your situation. Well, now a very popularized model is tiny home conversions, where people are coming in, buying parks, and they want to bring in homes. Well, if your electricity is limited, and those things can run off of 100 amps, some of them can run off 50 and below, but many of them require 100 amps. If you can't upgrade that electrical system very well, or if you don't have the permitting and the right approvals in place to have a higher water and higher wastewater capacity, then you can't use that model, which means, for the parks in that particular market, which can adopt that model where tiny homes can be valuable, then those parks just go up in value immediately, because that's a conversion model that makes sense. And that's something that, again, when people were making these things 20 years ago, you weren't thinking about that. That wasn't even on your radar. But now people developing are thinking about that.
Yeah, the campers are a lot bigger. Most of them are demanding a full 50 amps. And then like you're saying, a lot of those tiny homes, once you get, water heaters in there and then washer and dryer units, they're getting above 50, 60 amps for sure.
Yep. Yep. You've talked in the past about turning around a struggling park in as little as 90 days. What are the levers that you pull on first to try to accomplish that in such a short amount of time?
Well, I think the example is this little West Texas park that I got, owner finance. It's a nice old man, Mr. Archie. He used to be the mayor of that town. He was like in his 80s. He built it 15, 20 years ago as a little retirement plan. And he was cash only, no websites. There was just a sign off of a main road on the way to Lubbock. And he lived down the street. And when somebody would check in, because it was half monthly, half nightly folks were on their way to Rio Doso, Colorado, and it was the halfway stopping point from Austin or DFW. The other half of the folks were solar farm, windmill maintenance guys, all kind of cycled through there pretty often. But it's cash only. When he meets you on site, he'd hand you a little branded flashlight, talk to you for a minute. But I'm just like, with all these nightly people, a lot of people like that charm, and I think that's great. And there's nothing wrong with it. But the first step was like, okay, online presence, get some Google ads going, make some connections with the local workforce by offering some referral programs. And then next thing you know, we just kind of just started picking that thing up. And then as we built some relationships as like these windmill maintenance guys, they'll be there for 2, 6, or 8 months. But when they're gone for 3 to 6 months, they're coming back, or some other guys are cycling through, and then they had a good time. We gave them some referral bonuses. Next thing you know, I have a steady stream just because I offered a guy, hey, if you tell your buddies to come to this park with you, I'll give you $50 off your next month's lot rent. And I'll throw in a case of beer if it's attractive to you. I've done that.
Yeah. And in certain markets, man, that's all it takes. And other markets, that just wouldn't move the needle at all. It's all about knowing your customer.
Yeah, because we were in the middle of construction on that one. And so we were on site for like a week, and I was talking to these guys, and I knew that they all 6 were together. And the next thing you know, we're having a couple beers, playing some cornhole together, and we're getting to know them. And it was a great group. And so it was pretty interesting to see like how their cycle works, like traveling gypsy style, workers on their windmill maintenance. And again, they don't know if they're going to be somewhere 2 months or 8 months. And sometimes when they're wrapping up a job, what I learned was extremely important to them is being able to prorate a month for days they didn't use. So, because to them, they might just get a phone call, hey, pack your stuff up, I need you to go somewhere else tomorrow. And they're like, well, I just paid for the month. We'll make sure and refund them because we want to be happy, because we know they're going to tell their friends. We know they're going to come back.
Huge, huge. You've also made the point in the past that some owners are giving away free electricity. And I'm assuming you're talking about master metered versus individually metered. So we don't need to like dig too deep into that unless there's anything else you want to add on that. But what are some of the other common revenue leaks that you found, and how, if corrected, how fast can they start to pay you back?
Well, a mobile home park, we had to go to war with the city on the water. Like I physically checked all 130 water connections at these mobile homes, because part mobile home, part RV, and then just something wasn't right. And then so they had to check the water meter, and then next thing you know, they magically credited us $5,000, and they're like, well, and then so something weird was going on. So I think it's important to have a little bit of construction lens, especially if you're acquiring an older park, because there's just weird crap like that can happen. But paying really close attention to your utilities, looking for trends. And after you see enough parks, you're analyzing parks, and then you notice like a higher trend of water, like, hey, that's not adding up. And you can catch a water leak that's not visual. Like some weird water leaks I've seen, you can't see it. It's not pulling up because it's going into the sewer line somehow. So you're not going to be able to see it. So just a few weird things like that. But operational is just important on your bigger parks or your heavier, higher touch parks. So this park that we have under contracts, 300 sites, a little redneck paradise in South Louisiana. They got a water slide. They're on the river. They got some permanent sites, more like a weekend hangout, a lot of events, swimming pool. But going through their process, the main lady, she's working 70 hours a week. She physically drives by, like hand writes things down. They don't have anything digital. And I'm just like, life does not need to be that hard. Like we're going to have to replace that lady because she wants to retire. But if we get somebody else in there and then we add some systems and processes, I bet you we can get that down to 40 hours a week. It's just, how big is that? I think, how do you quantify that? You just, start writing it out, but you keep doing those few things. The next thing you know, your park's worth $500,000 more.
Yeah. That's a really good point. So you're talking about West Texas parks that are probably more like man camps. You've got workforce housing. You've got now Redneck Paradise, which I'm going to adopt that. But just the concept of owning and managing multiple parks in different markets that cater to a different clientele. That's a daunting concept to somebody who has always been living on site, running their park, and the idea of pulling away from that is just like it doesn't connect. They've never tried it, or if they've tried it, they've never been able to accomplish it. So what operational systems or automations or whatever it is are the highest value levers that will allow an owner to step back from living on site or being deeply involved with the day-to-day without the place falling apart?
Yeah. First and foremost is AI is not going to take away people and personality and comfort and kindness. And so that as an owner stepping away, your most important piece is the reflection of you, which is that new park manager. So finding that right person, pouring into them. I like to, like talk to them like they're, like I like to be friends with them. Like, hey, what do you need for your life to get easier? Because, your happiness and success here is my success. And I explain how important they are and, talk them up, make them feel good. But you'll find like sometimes it's just little things that they need in their life. Like I had one maintenance guy and like I just helped him get a truck. And so now he has a reliable truck. His life is like infinitely better. He doesn't let me pay him extra for anything. He's always got my back. So just digging into your people is first and foremost, because they're the reflection of you, the reflection of your park when you can't be there if you're other places. And then you start digging into, what are some different systems like that Redneck Paradise. There's a lot of permanent sites. So there's a lot of weekend traffic and they do like 80 grand a year in day passes. So there's a lot of traffic. So there's a lot of hands-on employees touching everything with all their existing process. So the very first thing we're going to do is upgrade the camera system because we need more security, safety, because they only have like 2 cameras in a 300 site park just for safety and security. But we're also going to add some AI cameras for license plate readers. And we're going to tie that into the new booking software. So all these people that come in at certain times, day passes, all this stuff, we got it down, because you just have a computer pretty much do that stuff for you. It's closing time. And then you can just go online and look, and the day pass person, this license plate's still here. Then you just click a button, you call them, say, hey, it's time to go, instead of having somebody physically do all that, touch all that.
That right there is such a gold nugget. So obviously there's things that you can automate and there's things that you want to have a person involved. We've talked about that previously ad nauseum.
So the owner operator it's two-sided. Like we were analyzing this park in Central Florida, another little redneck paradise on the river, 65 acres. They had a lot of moving parts, golf carts. Everybody was having fun. I hope we still can get that one. But what we learned upon the site visit and talking with the main on-site manager that's not the owner and just driving around with them and asking them 250 questions is the owner was in the way. So he was physically harming the reputation of his park with his decision making. Like one big shift that cost him an F ton of bookings was those stupid block site fees, where if you want to camp and your buddy's camping right here, you got to pay an extra $10 or $25 to have that site specifically. As soon as they implemented that to try to make a few $1,000s more a year, they had 100 people tell them, this is pissing me off and I don't like it. We're probably going to stay somewhere else. So why would you keep doing that? And the owner was like, well, we're making a few extra $1,000. I'm like, so the lesson from that one was like, just get the F out of the way and let your park is beautiful. Just let it keep being beautiful. The other side of that, if you have a park to where people know, like, and trust you, you're the face, you're the person, you're it. So if you're trying to step away, that could be tough from, I wouldn't say controlling, but like letting go and having faith in the next person, but also making sure you get the next person in there. So it could be a little tricky.
I couldn't agree with that more. And the one thing I might add is just understanding KPIs. I mean, if you're just a mom and pop operator, KPIs might be kind of not a foreign concept to you, but that like you're not thinking in terms of high finance. You're thinking about how do I run the best park that I can? How do I do it for my best quality of life? Yeah. But if you should understand what those KPIs are, if you're bringing somebody else in, they should have a clear understanding of what those KPIs are. And you guys should both review those periodically. whether it's
Mhm.
your, what is the marketing spend that they're doing, and then what is the actual return on that marketing spend, so that you can, collaboratively tweak that over time. It's not necessarily a punitive thing where you just need to be watching over their shoulders at all time, but it's a collaborative thing. You can work together with your property management company to help them run a better business there as well. And it also doesn't hurt for the management company to know that you're aware of the metrics and everything as well, because if a management company has 10, 20, 30 parks, I mean, there's only so many people at that company with so much oversight on any particular park. And that's not nearly as much time as an owner operator would have on site if they're doing the whole 40-hour a week gig. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's worse. It just means that you need to have clear expectations and, like you said, clear North Star goals.
100%. Because there's your seasonal trends, there's your area regional trends. There's things like that to where if you had a partner that was looking at that more professionally than maybe you haven't been in the past, you can start noticing some patterns. And if you can notice some patterns and you can get ahead of them, you can optimize your park and have a big shift. Like that park I keep referencing in South Louisiana, they have, like, the winter time is obviously dead time, but it's still right off I-10, an hour from New Orleans. There's still snowboards coming down this place, and it's right off main interstate, and there's just no plan in the winter. It's just kind of where they can relax. But I'm like, why are you not marketing to the snowbirds so they're gravitating there, or a couple hours from Gulf Shores? They're driving through New Orleans because that's a great place coming through. It's right off I-10. So that's their deadest season, and there's no attention there. So, I mean, that could just be one little shift, and the next thing you know, we just added 40, I don't even know, just a lot.
Yeah. So this series is called Built to Sell, and I'm a very firm believer that the same decisions that you can make, or the changes that you can make in your business today to run it more profitably, are the exact same levers that you can pull to make a property worth more in the future when you sell it. So for you, in your opinion, when you're improving a park, how much are you managing for cash flow today versus building an asset that's worth more on a future exit?
Same Louisiana park. They half the park has Wi-Fi, all the park has network, and so they're spending $90,000 a year on Dish Network, and a few old timers like it. Most people could care less. I'm like, why don't we spend $100,000 and get some badass Wi-Fi for these 300 sites and remove $90,000 a year in expenses with a $100,000 one-time cost? I'm like, why are we not doing that? That's the first thing that we're going to do in that park.
Yeah. Things like that, depending on what your hold period is, right? Some people want to sell in 10 months. Some people don't want to sell for another 10 years. And you should be making decisions differently. Make decisions on your infrastructure, for instance, which are going to make your operating expenses lower or more manageable or more predictable. So I always tell people, and it's remarkable how many people don't exactly know what their hold period is. But that's the number one thing I think people should have an understanding of. And even if you don't have an honest answer, that's okay. Run your park like you were planning to sell it, because life happens. I teach my agents, keep an eye on what we call the 6 Ds. That's death, divorce, disease, dissolution of a partnership, debt, and disaster. Those things you can't really predict, maybe debt, but you can't really predict those things. But that doesn't mean that you should be running your business without a P&L, without financial statements, not knowing where your deed is, things like that. I mean, if you can just run a tighter business there, that's going to make things, first off, a lot more visible for you so that you can actually see what you've got. And that makes it a lot easier to make improvements. But if circumstances change and you have to sell in the next 6 months, that makes it so much easier to do so. And people just I wish I could just drill that. That's why we're doing things like this. I want to drill that into people's heads, because I'll have people call me and say, hey, Landan, we're finally ready to sell. You've been calling me for 5 years. Let's go. And I say, great. Here's the list of things that I need. I'll give you one example. I got a client who said, we're ready to go. We need to be out of this thing in 6 months. I said, perfect. Send me your P&L and your rent roll. He said, no problem. What's a rent roll? And I was like, wait a minute. What? We should have had this conversation a couple of years ago. One, so that you know what it is. Two, so that you could be tracking it historically and we show it. But now we have to build that. We have to build that with whatever information you've got on hand, which is kind of a daunting experiment that I have to now go into and solve for.
All right. Let's have big shifts too. I mean, I love analyzing the park, and they're like, oh, well, projected going forward, this happened, and so it's going to be great. I'm like, but what about the past 12 to 24 months?
Yeah.
Love it.
Every seller wants a buyer to pay off of pro forma, or just what this could be worth. And, I have to be the bearer of bad news in many cases and say, look, they're not going to pay you a premium based on what this park could potentially do. And maybe you are a lackluster operator. Maybe you've tried your darndest to make this thing as successful as possible and it just hasn't worked out. But either way, no one's going to pay you for the upside. There's 148 parks on the market right now in Texas. Why would they pay a premium for yours when they could just go buy the next one down the road, probably get a better day one return, and not have to play the pro forma game? But I get it. Yes, it's just a hard pill to swallow, especially if someone's not super transactional. Like, I have the benefit of doing this every single day. I've got thick skin when it comes to those types of conversations. But if this is your baby, if this is your family property, if this is your legacy, if the park is named after you, like you think that the market should pay more for this, the abstract, the stuff that's not there. All that matters is what the money, for the majority of buyers, all that matters is how much does this thing produce? Can it pay my debt service? And is this going to be a good investment for me? Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you are the one acquiring it, there's the past 12, 24 months, but there's also day one, I'm acquiring it. What does this thing really look like? And then you can start looking forward with your optimism and the shifts that you can make. But I think it's really important. It's like, yeah, here's the numbers, but when you're trying to figure out your cash reserves and hey, I'm buying this thing, and like you just figuring out your whole game plan, it's like day one, what does exactly this thing look like? Because what it looked like to them might not be what it looks like to me.
One funny thing that we experience all the time is that a prospective buyer wants the financials so that they can underwrite the property, so that they can analyze it and run it through their model or put it beside their buy box or whatever. But almost as quickly as they request the financials, they throw them right out the window and they plug in their own model. So to your exact example, yeah, I know park owners that are absolutely operating at a sub 20% expense ratio, which is an anomaly. I mean, that's far outside the bell curve for the majority of parks operating anywhere. Even if it's a long-term park, it's especially impossible if you've got more transient folks coming through there and amenities and things like that. But you just can't assume the value of a park. If you're knowledgeable enough to know that this is going to trade on a cap rate multiple, I'm familiar with what the cap rates are in the current market. You can't extrapolate a future value based off your operations. You have to think about it in terms of who's actually going to buy this, what type of systems and operation are they going to run, and what is their expense load going to be, because it's probably going to be different than mine. The reason that you're operating at sub 20% operating expenses is because you do everything yourself. You're the maintenance guy. You're the front desk guy. You're doing all this stuff yourself, but you're valuing your time at effectively zero at that point. And that's just not the way that anybody looks at it. So again, that's a hill we have to, or I guess a cliff we have to talk people off of all the time. While also, on the brokerage side, we don't want to lose your business. We want to tell you this not to beat you up on price. That's not our goal. We want to sell your property for you, but that means that you need to trust us. Or say it again.
Yeah, and setting those realistic expectations.
Yeah. So last question I've got for you, then we can wrap this thing up. This is a fun one. So take this in whatever direction you want to. What's the biggest myth about RV park or mobile home park investing that you would love to bust? And where do you see the most opportunity in this space over the next few years?
The biggest myth is what you touched on earlier is the big gurus. They're like, you're going to buy one park, you're going to retire $15,000 a month, walk in the park. I would just say you got to be, if you want to be successful in this business, you got to be prepared to go to war on it. You got to be prepared for everything to go wrong. You got to be prepared for an economic shift in your area that you didn't see happen. So what are you going to do differently to keep folks in there? What relationships can you build? How do you dig in? And all that's work. It's not something that's just going to happen. You might have some really good success and things to just show up at your data center pops up at your park you've had for 5 years, or solar farms, or some new development, or just some new shift in that local economy. But you got to be ready to just go to war. You got to be ready to pivot, and all that takes work. And so you got to be ready to work. So go in there with a servant mindset, go in there with a good work ethic, listen to your people and make it happen. So what was the other side of it?
The second part of that was, where do you see the most opportunity in this space over the next few years?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure we can easily agree. Recent COVID years, real estate shifts. You're seeing a lot of bigger money, private equity, bigger companies coming in here, making, concrete jungle RV parks, thinking they're going to fill up, and not realizing that we're just like any other asset class in real estate, that we have your trends, you have your roller coasters. But the biggest, opportunity is personal touch. A lot of those folks are just like, hey, I ran the numbers and I did all my research and it's going to fill up. But did you go to that diner and talk to the grandma? Did you go in there, talk to the Chamber of Commerce? Did you go drive through all the other parks and get a feel, get a pulse, and get some energy? Did you, if you're buying a park, did you go there, have a couple of cold beers with the locals and talk to them? Why are they in the park? What brought them to this park? Because without that, there's so many things that you're not seeing that I don't care. I don't care what the paperwork says, unless you go there and you get a feel for it. Like this park I keep mentioning in Louisiana, there's 125 due diligence list items, and they were handwritten on a piece of paper. And they took a picture and they put it in our Google Drive. And the all the expenses, there was no rent rolls. It was just put into like a cookie cutter QuickBooks that didn't make any sense. And so I was like, obviously we had to negotiate a higher cap rate that they didn't like. And it is what it is, because we had to be bankable. We're getting an SBA loan on that one. It's the judgment call was doing that site visit, getting a feel for these people, verifying that 1.7 million that they actually do have coming in. They don't have it in weird places. And we got bank statements, and we did all the work that they should have been doing to verify that. And then we had to make that judgment call. And so all those pieces that takes more physical hands off that might scare somebody, to me is a green light. I think that park is missing so many opportunities. It's going to be fun. It's going to be hard, but at the same time, it's going to be easy at the end of the day to really increase the occupancy, to get it from going 1.7. I think I can get it up to 3 million and keep the expenses at a lower percentage than it is now. So I think it's going to be a home run, just with that personal touch, talking to the people, digging in, going to work.
Yep. Which again, it's not passive. It's hard if you think it's going to be passive. It's easy if you know it's going to be hard work, because all you need to do is the hard work. It's pretty formulaic after that point. I was on the phone. I mean, you know me, I talk to owners every single day. As much as I can be on the phone talking to an owner or be meeting on site with an owner of a park, like that's a win for me for that day or for that week or whatever. And I've got 100 stories I could tell like this, but I had this conversation with an owner, an ownership group who purchased a park up in the Metroplex like 2-3 years ago. And this particular area in the Metroplex is super high growth. I mean, there's been a lot of development, population growth, everything from start to finish. And that includes new parks. And what we discovered over the course of this call is that there were several new parks that were built in this immediate trade area over there since they purchased their park like 2 years ago. And it basically increased the total rentable spaces by a factor of like close to 3. So now you have and by the way, around that same time, the market growth trajectory kind of plateaued because of the jobs and the local economy. But so now you have 3x the number of rentable spaces, and the demand, which was previously increasing exponentially, plateaued. So these guys get on the phone with me and they're like, hey, we want to sell this thing. Like, this was kind of a wild hair idea that we had. We want out. What are our options? And I looked at their numbers and like, you can't sell this thing. I mean, if you do, you're losing money, but don't sell right now. You should focus on better improvements, like better operations and better marketing. And they're like, well, we feel like we're doing that so much. We meet several times a week with our staff and our owner and everybody on site. And we meet with our marketing company once a month, and we get reports from them, and it's like nothing's moving the needle. And I looked at him, I was like, dude, what you're talking to me about is passive ownership. And they're like, no, we're super involved. I'm like, no. Like, you need to have a guerrilla trench warfare mindset about your park. Like, yes, there's more competition and there's fewer leads, and you're now competing against everybody else. But I know these other park owners, or at least I know of them. They're not like, they're having the same problem that you are. And maybe they've got a nicer, newer park that's getting customers a lot easier. But like, you need to be thinking super aggressively about how can you steal customers from those other parks. Like, think about it from that perspective. Think about how you can run ads. Think about how you can market to those people particularly. Think about the jobs in the area and the relationships that you can make with those project managers or those contractors, the people who have, a lot of employees coming in that rent spaces at your type of park. Every single space at your park is costing you somewhere between $20 and $50 a day. If it sits vacant, maybe not $50, that's pretty high, but it's expensive. But like, you should be driving your market. You should be looking at your competition, and you should be looking at every single trailer that's on another park. And you should be thinking about, who is that person? What's important to them? And how do I steal them? And if you shift your mindset and start thinking that way, if you shift your mindset and start thinking that way, the floodgate of opportunities and ideas is going to come down on you like torrential rain, because now you're thinking differently about your marketing, and now you're thinking differently about like what differentiates your park. And now you have, you've taken off your passive income hat and you've put on your like, hey, I'm going to war hat. And that's what it takes to run a park in 2026. So anyway, Jason, I am super happy that we got to do this together. I was, as we talked about before this, I was the first person on your podcast, right?
I think, yeah, first or second. It was
First or second. So yeah, this is cool. Nice full circle moment for us. For anybody that's watching this, Jason's about as sharp as it comes in this space on pretty much every aspect, from the management to the operations to obviously the infrastructure and construction and everything. He's got several different service lines that he offers. So if you are a current owner and you're looking at a network, if you are someone who's looking to hire someone to build a park, if you're someone who's wanting to explore third-party management, reach out to Jason. We'll include all of his contact information in the notes below or on the end of this episode. But Jason, again, thank you for being here. This has been fun, and let's do it again soon. What do you think?
Look forward to it.
Awesome, man. Thank you.